This is the R2D2 RC car from 5 and below, and we're going to unbox it and then test it out to see how good or bad it is. Now in the box, you get your manual, which I really recommend you use, and then your very strange looking remote, and then the R2D2 itself. Now for the remote, it's actually very weird because you can only go forward and back. You can't steer it at all. So we'll find out how that works later. And finally, the R2D2. I'm just gonna call it a car from now on. I mean, for $5, this thing doesn't look too bad. But man, this thing is light. I mean, you can't even tell you're holding it. Now on the box, this thing says it has a high speed. So we will see how accurate that is. Now for the tires on this thing, they are pretty small, but they are rubber, so we'll see how they do later. Now to power this thing on, you will need 2 AAAs for the controller and 3 AAAs for the car. Now we're out here on the driveway, and we're going to start testing this thing. Alright, let's see how fast it is. Oh, wait, what? Okay, so you know how I said the tires were so small on this thing? They're actually so small that I can't even drive on the pavement. So this thing is definitely meant for indoors. But I will just drive it right here since this is pretty flat. Now let's see how fast it is. Here we go. Oh, wow. Jeez, guys, that's so fast. Oh my gosh, I can't even control it. Now, I wouldn't be mad that this isn't fast, but the fact that the box says it has a high speed, I'm mad. Now what I'm going to do is drive it in a straight line and see how long it takes for it to veer off, since we can't steer it left and right. So as you can see, this thing cannot drive in a straight line, so the fact that it doesn't have steering means that you can't drive this for a very long time before you have to like pick it up and move it around yourself. So I really don't have any high hopes for this car right now, but there is still another test, and that is to see how much range this controller has. Now we're gonna have to change this up from how we usually do it since this can't drive on the driveway. So what I'll do is have this controller in the vise so that it constantly presses the throttle, and I'll turn this controller out to the driveway, and I'll hold the car, walk it down, and when it loses connection, I'll stop it there and measure it. Whew, that was a lot. Alright, let's do this. So believe it or not, the car actually just lost signal right here. So I'm just gonna set this down and we'll measure it. And this is how far the car can go from the controller. 15 feet. Wow. Now no offense to 5 and below, but I've never had a car do this bad on the range test. And I've tested quite a bit of cars. But again, this is the cheapest car I've tested out of the bunch, so I guess it kind of makes sense. Alright, so I gotta say, not very impressed with this thing. So let's go over some things that I really don't like about this car. The tires on this thing are so small that they cannot go over any bumps whatsoever. So unless you have a really flat driveway, this thing is strictly meant for indoors. However, you cannot turn this thing because it's only a forward and backwards remote, which means to turn a corner or go into a room, you have to physically go up to the car, pick it up, and move it to go into that room. But even then, it still doesn't even drive that straight, and also drives pretty slow. And last, and definitely not least, is the range this thing has. Wherever you want to drive this thing at, you basically have to hold the remote and follow it wherever you want to go, or else it'll lose connection pretty quickly. And even though this thing is not that great, there are a few positives to it. The first thing being this switch. It's placed in a way so that not much stuff will hit it and turn it off as you're driving it, which means that you don't have to walk back over to the car and turn it back on, even though it can't get that far from you. And for when you're driving this thing, even though the tires are small and can't go over much, they are pretty grippy, which means you don't have to worry about any traction loss. But that is until you get dust and stuff on these tires, but you just wipe it off and you'll be fine. And now the last thing I like about this is honestly how this thing looks. I mean, for $5, I think they put more work into the details than the actual RC car parts. So unless you're getting this for someone young, which is what this is intended for, this is kind of like a shove queen that can also work as an RC car. Not a very good one though. Man, this poor car is just getting roasted in the whole video. Now, if you do want to buy this thing or check it out, there will be a link in the description below. Now, this was probably the worst cheapo RC car I've ever reviewed on the channel before. However, this one right here is probably the best one I've ever reviewed. And that'll do it for the review today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will make sure to catch you in the next one. Stay awesome out there. Peace.